A group of friends sits around a table. The energy is alive, buzzing. Then someone's name comes up, someone who isn't there. The room shifts. Eyes widen, voices drop to that familiar whisper. Most people lean in, they want the details. They want the story, they want that feeling of knowing something they shouldn't. But one person stays quiet. They don't add fuel, they don't ask questions. They might nod politely, but their energy pulls back. Maybe they can change the subject. Maybe they check their phone, maybe they just wait for it to pass. And you have to wonder why. What kind of mind sits in the middle of gossip and feels no pull to participate? What kind of person hears secrets about others and doesn't feel that itch to spread them further? Is it moral superiority? Is it fear? Is it just a lack of social interest? Stick with me until the end. Because the answer might explain something about yourself that you've never fully understood. And if you're the one who never gossips, tonight you'll finally have words for why. You see, gossip is ancient. It predates written language. Anthropologists believe it was one of the earliest forms of social bonding. Sharing information about others, who could be trusted, who couldn't, who was loyal, who betrayed, helped communities survive. So when someone doesn't gossip, they're resisting something deeply wired into the human brain. That's nothing. That's unusual. And unusual behaviors always have roots. So let's explore 3 psychological profiles of people who never gossip. Not to judge them, but to understand them. First, there are the people I call the once burned. Some people don't gossip because they've lived on the other side of it. They know what it feels like to walk into a room and sense the silence wasn't natural. They've experienced that moment when a friend's eyes avoid theirs a little too quickly. They felt that slow, creeping realization that people were talking, and not in a kind way. Psychologically, this is what we call a trauma response. When someone has been the subject of gossip, the brain encodes that experience as danger. It files it under threat, and from that point forward, even hearing gossip can trigger a protective mechanism. They don't participate because participating would feel like betrayal, not of the person being discussed, but of the version of themselves that once stood alone while others whispered. These are the people who remember what rumors did to their reputation, their friendships, their mental health. They remember crying in private. They remember pretending it didn't hurt. They remember the loneliness of being misunderstood by people who never even asked for the truth. And that memory doesn't fade just because time passes. So they make a silent vow. They refuse to do to others what was done to them. This isn't moral superiority, it's moral memory. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about refusing to repeat a pain they understand too well. If you've ever been deeply hurt by gossip, you don't need anyone to explain why it's harmful. Your nervous system already knows, and your silence isn't coldness, it's protection. Now there's another group. These people don't gossip not because they were hurt by it, but because they understand something uncomfortable about the nature of gossip itself. Here's the thing, gossip is rarely about the person being discussed, it's about the person doing the discussing. Psychologically, this is called projection. When we criticize others, we're often revealing our own insecurities, fears, or unmet desires. The traits we judge most harshly in others are frequently the traits we deny in ourselves. These people, the ones I think of as the mirror holders, they understand this deeply. They've spent time looking inward. They've done the uncomfortable work of examining their own flaws, their own shadows, their own moments of weakness. And because they've faced their own imperfections honestly, they lose the urge to magnify the imperfections of others. Carl Jung called this integrating the shadow. It's the psychological process of accepting the parts of yourself you'd rather hide. People who have done this work tend to have less interest in gossip because they recognize the game. They see how talking about others is often just a way of avoiding the self, and they've grown tired of avoidance. These are the people who, when someone starts gossiping, feel a strange sense of discomfort. Not because they're judging the gossiper, but because they recognize the pattern. They've been there, they've used criticism of others to feel better about themselves, and they've learned it never really works, so they opt out. Not from a place of superiority, but from a place of exhaustion. They're too busy holding the mirror to themselves to spend energy pointing at others. And then there's a third group. These people approach gossip from an entirely different angle. They don't avoid it because of trauma. They don't avoid it because of deep self-awareness. They avoid it because they've learned to protect their energy. Psychologically, this relates to emotional regulation and boundary setting. These are people who have noticed something important. Every conversation has a cost. Every interaction leaves a residue, and gossip specifically tends to leave a negative impression. Think about it for a second. After gossiping, do you feel lighter, inspired, energized, or do you feel slightly drained, vaguely guilty, maybe a little paranoid that you'll be the next topic when you leave the room? These energy economists, as I like to call them, have tracked these patterns in themselves. They've noticed that gossip often disguises itself as connection, but it doesn't actually create closeness. It creates anxiety. It creates suspicion. It creates that unspoken question we all know too well. If they're talking about others to me, what are they saying about me to others? So they draw a line, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. They redirect conversations. They refuse to engage. They protect their mental bandwidth the same way they might protect their time or their money, because they understand that energy is finite. And gossip is a withdrawal with no return. This might look cold from the outside, but inside, it feels like freedom. These people have learned that saying less often means feeling more, and guarding their inner world has become more valuable than fitting into conversations that quietly corrode it. Now here's the psychological turn most people don't expect. People who never gossip are often misunderstood. They're labeled as cold, detached, boring, judgmental, holier than thou. But if you look closer, you'll notice something interesting. These are often the people you trust the most. Think about it. When you have a secret, who do you tell? The person who always has stories about others, or the one who never shares them? When you're in crisis, who do you call? The one who broadcasts every detail of everyone's life, or the one who holds space without leaking? The psychology here is fascinating. People who never gossip often become social anchors. They create emotional safety just by existing. Their silence signals something powerful. I can be trusted. And in a world overflowing with noise, oversharing, and constant exposure, that silence becomes rare, valuable, even magnetic. But here's the other side of it. This trait comes with a weight. People who never gossip often feel isolated. They struggle to connect in social environments where gossip is the default bonding language. They watch groups form around shared criticism and feel no invitation to join. They sit on the outside of conversations not because they're unwelcome, but because participating would cost too much. It can be lonely to hold your tongue when everyone else is letting theirs run free. It can be exhausting to constantly redirect, to change the subject, to feel like you're swimming against a social current that never slows down. And sometimes the refusal to gossip is mistaken for the refusal to connect. People assume you don't care, that you're above it all, that you're quietly judging them, when really you're just protecting something, your peace, your integrity, your sense of who you want to be. So here's the question that returns quietly. Which one are you? Are you the one who was burned and now carries the memory of being the story everyone told? Are you the one who's faced the mirror so honestly that pointing at others feels unnecessary? Or are you the one who's simply learned that energy spent on gossip is energy stolen from something better? Maybe you're a mix of all three. Most people are, but if you've ever felt different for staying silent, if you've ever wondered why the gossip doesn't tempt you the way it seems to tempt others, now you know. It's not emptiness, it's not coldness. And it's definitely not arrogance, it's awareness. It's a decision, conscious or unconscious, to move through the world differently, to measure your words, to protect not just yourself but the dignity of people who aren't in the room to defend themselves. And that's not a flaw, that's depth. On one side of the table, voices buzz with names and stories and half-truths dressed up as concern. On the other side, someone stays quiet, watching, listening, choosing not to add to the noise. Both are human. Both exist for reasons, but the ones who never gossip carry something the others don't always understand. They carry the knowledge that words have weight, that reputations are fragile, that trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild easily. They've learned, maybe through pain, maybe through growth, maybe through sheer intuition, that the things we say about others shape who we become. And they've decided quietly to become someone who builds rather than tears down. So maybe the real question isn't whether you gossip or stay silent. Maybe it's this: what do you want your words to leave behind? Do they create safety or suspicion? Do they open doors or close them? Do they build people up when they're not around or chip away at them slowly? You don't need to be perfect. No one is, but you can be intentional. And intention over time becomes identity. Tell me in the comments. Which type felt most familiar to you? The wounded, the aware, the protected? There's no right answer here, just recognition. If this made you see yourself a little more clearly, hit subscribe. We go deeper every day, like this video. It helps more people find messages like this one, and don't miss the next one. We dive into the kind of psychology that actually explains you. See you there.